Okay.
I'm going to have to go to Google and find it, okay?
Okay.
What could be wrong about everything? Well,
I'm probably wrong about everything.
Yeah. Okay. Trying to get you on speaker too, and I'm not.
No, you don't have to. You don't have to have me on speaker.
Let me just. Yeah, because I can't hear you well. I need you on speaker. But let me go. I'm probably wrong by everything.
Richard, you could tell them your new book title. Talk to the audience.
Hello there, this is Richard Foss, and my next book will be called, I should make something really up now, something incredibly cryptic, but it's actually going to be, at least the next nonfiction is going to be Cooking Up a New West, How California Changed the Cuisine of the World. It's about each wave of immigration and how it changed the way the world eats. I'm speaking and just saying random things in the hope that someone somewhere can actually hear them.
That's it.
And 10-9-876-54321. Now what should I do? Is anyone hearing this?
We succeeded. Thank you so much.
Already.
Welcome to the Global Theater. My name is Gerry Fialka, and today is September 17th, 2025. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with Richard Foss. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast, I'm Probably Wrong About Everything. And we want to thank Richard's brother, Bill, for introducing us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gerry.
Richard, what a pleasure. Here we go. We're framed properly. And we're going to start off with the first question is, what's the best thing for a human being?
The best thing for a human being is unscheduled, unscripted interaction, whether that interaction be through conversation, through music, through something wordless, through dance, that has you feeling that sense of community and shared humanity. And as much as I, as someone who has presented a lot of scripted programs, they're a jumping off point. They're a way of getting the questions flowing, because in a lot of cases, when you present a lecture, the questions are where the information comes at the beginning. The understanding comes through the questions.
Yeah. Beautiful answer. That was so much my mantra, and you put it into words so well. I appreciate that. I worked for George Carlin, and we got a flyer in the mail once, and it said, I'm trying to get more control over my spontaneity. And I think that's kind of what you're like, hey, the script helps, but really it's almost like you want it to happen just organically, naturally, or however, off the wall. Or
well, it's a weird contradiction in terms, but sometimes you do have to schedule spontaneity. You have to leave a hole in the schedule. The world will pile things up for you to do if you let it.
Yeah.
But you need to say, I'm going to take some times to just, I reserve this. I will fight for this. I will let no one take it. And I don't know what I'm going to do at that particular time, but I'm going to do it. It may be that I contact someone who I haven't heard from in a while. It may be that I go out with friends or family and just go out and escape somewhere. I literally, in years gone by, when I was in my early 20s, I actually scheduled some weekends with a map of California and a set of darts. And I'm a really lousy aim. So, I could have hit anything, including not even the map. If that happened, I allowed myself to throw again. And if the dart hit something blue, it's like, okay, what's the closest accessible space of land that's close to there? And I'm going to go see what's there. And I once or twice had other people who were around my house and watched this just because they couldn't believe it. And I would say, you want to go? It's like, now we know where we're going. And I never had a bad weekend that
Oh,
way.
wow.
Never. Because even if the place that we went to was boring, we had a car with a couple of people with a questing attitude, and we would find something interesting along the way. The rule is that if you are doing that and you see any sign that's pointing to some historical landmark, any sign that's
Yeah.
pointing toward some point of interest, you don't ask, you just go.
Yeah.
My
Questing attitude, great word. You're a true wordsmith. That was beautiful. What's your favorite form of information? How it comes into you?
That depends on the information, because of the fact that I'll say, as a general thing, I process for analytical information, for information that I really need to think about, I process it best by reading.
Yeah.
For emotional information, I process it best in conversation.
Yeah.
There are very, very few things that I ever use video for. I will use video for something on how do I fix this arcane piece of machinery. Just basically using it as a video manual. But I don't watch television. I haven't been to a movie in a theater in many years. It's not the way that I like to receive information. When I watch anything but the most fantastically well-crafted movie, it feels like someone has my head and is going, look here, and now look here. You can't look anywhere but there. Okay, now look here. And, if it takes a great director to make me forget that I'm being manipulated that way, whereas a merely good author can have me completely involved in the book.
Really?
And a good conversation, I'm living in it in the moment.
Yeah, that is so cool. That because we've been studying the sphere in Vegas is showing Wizard of Oz, and do you know about it at all? It's a geodesic dome.
I have seen it. Yes,
they've expanded the frame of the film, and so your head is going like this. In a geodesic dome. It's not like watching a 50s black and white TV set where you're channeled. So that's funny. You even said, yeah, your head is being manipulated, watch here or there.
Well, the thing is that happens to be, all right, I mentioned that a really great director can make me forget that I'm in that moment. The problem with it is that when you have a narrative going, if you actually have that 360-degree thing, then that may mean when something pivotal in that narrative happens, you're looking in the wrong place. You don't know what just happened.
Yeah.
Many years ago in Los Angeles, there was a walk-through play called Tamara. Are you familiar with it at all?
Spell the
Tamara.
Okay.
What it was this was in a mansion in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And it was set in the mansion. It was a completely scripted play set in the mansion of an Italian politician from just before Mussolini got complete control. And it is the mostly true story of the politician with all kinds of other things woven into it.
Yeah.
And it was something that was a brilliant piece because you could follow any character you wanted as the action happened, because this is a politician who within his household, there are all kinds of intrigues. There are Mussolini spies. There's a Nazi spy. There's a British spy. Because this was someone, the actual person, a politician by the name of Gabriele D'Annunzio, was a rival for Mussolini who was distracted by an attempted love affair with a Polish portrait painter by the name of Tamara de Lempicka. So you could follow, if you followed Tamara, you would see various interactions and attempted sex scenes by Gabriele D'Annunzio, who got nowhere with her. But if you could follow the servants, you could follow all of these other people, and something fascinating was happening during all of it. And you could go back and see this play 5 times and barely have any interactions with the characters that you saw the previous time. There would be certain times when they were all in a room and all kinds of things would be happening. But to find out why they happened, you'd have to go back and see the play again to see why that person came through that door and said and did that thing. Brilliant thing for somebody, setting up a show, though the logistics of that are rather formidable. In the same way, you have in another version of the same thing, you have the famous play Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, which is actually a satisfying movie about what Shakespeare's characters are doing in Hamlet when they're not the focus of the attention, and they're aimless, they're meandering. You are created by a playwright, and the playwright's not paying attention to you, so you're just wandering around, and then suddenly your world snaps into focus. So anyway, I'm former theater director, and I'm interested by the ways that a good director can manipulate you and can make you focus on things without you feeling that manipulation. But it takes a very, very good one if you are the kind of person who has a certain sensitivity.
Yeah. Really thorough there. You evoked two really quick things. One is McLuhan had this anthropological study once where they showed natives in Africa, or whatever the correct word is you say nowadays, watch a movie. They weren't people who watched movies, and they watched a movie and the protagonist is in the middle of the screen and they're talking whatever, and a chicken runs through the background, and then they go, what did you think of the movie? And they go, where'd the chicken go? So they weren't trained to be focused on the main thing in the film, like you're saying, this manipulation in the theater direction. The other one was Mussolini invented the film festival, and you watch the documentary on subtitling films. He didn't want films in Italy to be subtitled. He wanted them to be dubbed because then they could reach the person better by hearing this dialect that they're used to, rather than reading a film, reading titles on a film.
The level of literacy in Italy during Mussolini's regime was fairly low, and Mussolini had another agenda, which was that Italy had a written language, but dozens of dialects that were mutually incomprehensible as late as the late 1800s. There was an attempt to force people to accept a common Italian dialect that was not really a natural dialect to anywhere in Italy. He wasn't saying everybody adopt the Roman dialect. He was saying everybody adopt this sort of new Italian dialect.
Yeah.
So he had an agenda to make entertainment in the dialect that was appropriate. This is one of the things that I'm a historian of Los Angeles, among other things. And when you look back into Los Angeles history, there were people there was no unified nation of Italy until after the year 1870. And there were still holdout sections that were part of the Papal States that held out to try to be independent and not part of Italy after that. But until 1860, 1870, if you called someone Italian, that didn't mean they were a native of that country. That meant they spoke Italian. That means Swiss people who spoke Italian. That meant people from Croatia who, coastal Croatians were more likely to speak the Venetian dialect of Italian as a first language than they were to really speak Serbo-Croatian, because the language of trade, the language of commerce was Italian, because their commerce with Italy was by water and close, whereas commerce with the rest of Croatia was on a path over some mountains. There wasn't a paved road from coastal Croatia to inland Croatia until the late 1950s, early 1960s.
Whoa.
So they were part of a country called Croatia, but Croatian was, with many of them, was on almost a second language.
Yeah. Amazing.
There was no country. It's the same thing with Germany. There was no country of Germany until Otto von Bismarck unified the country under what had been the king of Prussia, and you still had a separate king of Bavaria until World War I. So your German state is another thing. It was a construct. So what Mussolini was doing, what various other dictators and more well-meaning people have done through history, is to try to create a unification of a people by forcing them to use a common language, by forbidding speech in some other language.
Yeah. Well, Richard, you're concise and articulate, and I appreciate this. But I wanted to go back to reading, because you said reading and conversation. Did you become a reader, 1, because your parents told you, 2, they did as example, or 3, on your own?
Well, my brother and I have a twin brother. We were not particularly healthy as small children. We were born premature twins. We were not robust. And as such, we were not much into sports. We were not much into the things that the other children were doing. And we loved reading. And our mother and father were both readers, even though our father was someone who made it through a couple of days of, depending on when you were talking to him, the 10th or 11th grade. So he never graduated high school, but he loved reading. So yeah, we grew up in a house where people read, and our grandparents. We spent a lot of time with our grandparents because our parents both worked, and our grandparents' home was full of books, absolutely full. They learned that they had to put the books that were not appropriate for children on higher and higher shelves because we figured out how to climb them. And the very fact that there were forbidden books made us want to climb those shelves.
You got to get to Tom Jones quick. So why do you think humans collect or gather information?
To make sense of the world?
Yeah.
Well, all right. Collect or gather. I find myself thinking about that as being literally a hunter-gatherer. Are you a hunter or a gatherer of information? The answer is some people don't. Some people are perfectly happy to be relatively passive. The information that floats in front of their face, they will integrate, except for perhaps one particular thing. They'll become really fascinated with, I don't know, gaming, with knowing everything about a certain TV show, something similar, or they'll become, some people, just because of the way that their brain is built, they are poor at integrating emotional information and stories, but they're great at mathematics. They're great at something else. So that's the thing. I would question your assumption almost, in that I am the type of person who is, yes, I will often see something that's interesting and then follow a thread of information from it, and sometimes find myself years later still studying it avidly, because that caught my imagination, and I can sense that there is something that will enrich my life if I study that more.
Yeah, but this is really good, because another thing I want to emphasize is me and you versus the wording and the question. So we're sort of psychoanalyzing how they're worded. So I like when you said, I would, question your assumption on that wording, collect and gather. Because the next question is this need or want to collect information more innate or more invented?
I would offhand say, well, my instinct is to say innate, but we are shaped by the people around us who we admire. I was greatly shaped by someone who I knew in high school, who I later discovered was in various ways a fairly horrible person. But he was an editor and a writer and a questing thinker. And I became fascinated through conversations with him about how you transmit information, about how you word things, about the importance of picking your wording when, particularly in writing, because that's what his thing was. But when you meet someone like that, they shape your life so that they sensitize you to something that you keep on noticing for the rest of your life. So that's why when someone asks a question, I do sometimes ask why they picked that wording for a question. And I do that because I was sensitized at one particular point. So we can't have a good answer to that question because there's no control group. What percentage of this is nature versus nurture? We can't know.
We can't know. Beautiful. Okay. Do thoughts create emotions?
One can have thoughtless emotions. One can have thoughtful emotions.
Yeah.
So this is another one where certainly, I mean, the act of reading a really poignant passage in a book can move you to tears or wonder. And that's something that is entirely stuff going on in your head. Whereas you also can have emotions through things that are completely visceral, completely about living in the moment. There was an album that I used to have by a band out of Texas called Bedhead, called The Fun of Watching Fireworks. That was an instrumental album that I found both the title, because of the fact that it was about something that you don't need to talk about. You understand immediately what that is. And their music was something that was mostly instrumental, that slowly developed and grew from something simple to something more complex. And it used to always go just to the point where it seemed like they were just about to really cut loose and do some thrashing instrumental, and then it would stop, or it would fade away, and it would like lead you and lead you and lead you and then drop you. And it was something that, there's another band out of the math rock era called Polvo, Polvo, which is the Spanish and Portuguese word for squid, but which I've never heard a good reason why they were called that. Squid or octopus? I think it could be octopus. Anyway, but the band Polvo is the same thing. I find they're mostly instrumental music, and where there are vocals, the vocals don't matter much, but I find they're mostly instrumental music to be an emotional experience.
Yeah.
So I can be led to emotions by conversation, by things that are intellectual, by, of course, in this era of politics, people use language, and carefully phrased language, and they use the tonality of that language. They use everything about what they're saying in order to make someone emotional, to stir up love or hate or irritation. So it's both.
Yeah. That some of these earlier questions are, is it more this or more that? I know it's both usually, and it depends on the context. So you're doing great. This is really what I want, and I appreciate your time and energy here. Fill in the blank, Richard. I don't know what I think until
I'm wondering if you actually cribbed that question from Michel de Montaigne. Have you?
Wow.
Are you familiar with Montaigne?
Not well. I know the name, but I wonder where I got it. So most of my questions do come from other sources.
The reason is
so
that
this is good. Yeah,
Michel de Montaigne, writing in about 1580, said, "How do I know what I think till I see what I say?"
Yeah.
And he was talking about that situation where every once in a while, someone asks you a question and an answer snaps out of your mouth.
Yeah.
And you hear yourself saying it and you go, I didn't know I believed that, but I sure believe that. And so every once in a while, your subconscious will snap something out that your conscious didn't bother to let you know about. And we operate on a conscious and a subconscious level. And sometimes your subconscious will know something for some time, and then it will graciously share that with your conscious mind.
Yeah.
And when I am writing something, I know that I am doing my very best writing when I write something and laugh at it, because I'm shocked at what I just wrote. It's like, yep, that's right. I didn't know that's right, but that's right. That's what I believe.
This is amazing because Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it. Marshall McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. And there's other variations. And I've read that Montaigne quote, and I really want to research it more. I appreciate you telling me that. And again, it is Lakoff, linguist, neuroscientist, said that we operate 80% subconsciously or unconsciously. Now, since we've started, I felt we've both been here pretty much 95% consciously. But there are things, when I ask you a question, you feel I have to answer it now. It's not like I say in the intro comments, silence is okay. So if we sit there and I ask you the question and then you just sit and ponder it for 3 minutes, people will freak out. They'll think their sound has gone nuts. Or even if if you don't make a gesture, I mean, I can stare at the Zoom screen and see the person in total silence and think, wait, did they just freeze? So do you want to attempt to fill in that blank? That's all right if you don't. I don't know what I think until off the top of your head, what would you fill in?
I'm going to drop in, and I do this with literary references. Yeah. There's a very obscure book called Superstowe, Superstoe, that is a black comedy written in the late 1960s about a college professor who, for his class project, the class project for his college class is to take over the United States government.
Nice.
And they do this with careful manipulation of information. And the thing that reminded me of this is that at one point they decide that they are going to, having managed to get a fair amount of money, they decide that they're going to do this, again being 1960s, early 1970s, a hour-long television program that is really going to be about the deep issues in the world. And it will be one in which silence is okay. That if you ask someone and they want to think for 5 minutes and they're exulting over this, we can have dead air for 5 minutes deliberately, and America will watch this. And it's something where I don't know if America would have. I mean, the book is, it is an unfairly neglected and completely weird book. Now, as for finishing that, I don't know what I think until as you heard, I sometimes say that it's what I write. I sometimes think it's what I say.
Yeah.
And in general, those two things are together in that you discover what you think when you communicate it to someone else in some way.
Yeah.
You rephrase it in your own words. So I would just say, communicate it.
Exactly.
It has been
just going to say that. That's good.
It's been said
I communicate it. Yes.
It's been said that if you, what you cannot understand, what you cannot explain, you don't really understand.
Yeah.
Now, I think that's wrong. There are things that all of us understand on an intuitive basis, and we can't say why. We just know our subconscious hasn't shared that bit with us yet. So I think that that's an extreme idea of it, the neurolinguistic programming idea that says that if you don't have a word for it, it's not a real thing. That's
Oh
wrong.
my God. So how much have you studied neurolinguistic programming deeply or just surface?
Surface.
No
I would say
word,
surface because,
no word, it does not exist.
well, just that the idea that if there is no word for a thing,
Yeah,
then
it does not. Yeah.
not that it, I would be saying it's extreme to say that it doesn't exist, but you have you can't communicate in depth about a thing for which there are no words,
Yeah.
is the you know very, very brief summary of what neurolinguistic programming is. And I would take now examples of this. I dated someone who was Chinese, and I remember the day that she explained to me that in Chinese, there was no way that if one of your parents told you to do something, there literally was not a word to say no. You could say, I cannot do that at this time. It would be inconvenient at this time.
The
I will have
Chinese
to
have
do
no
that
word
later.
to say no to your parents.
Yeah, that that there literally was not a word in that language. And this again, I believe, I believe that, she was saying it, I believe that the core of that is correct. There are things that everybody understands as being no, but it's not truly no, I refuse.
Dude, that's my favorite bumper sticker is question authority, but not your mother. And the other reference to dead air was brilliant because you can watch Frank Zappa play one of his compositions on YouTube. It's called Dead Air. And he just stares at the audience for maybe 10 seconds, and it is classic. That dead air thing. NLP, you're covering the waterfront. So, can humans think without language?
That's the question we just addressed.
Yeah.
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
Because there are people who are nonverbal autistics,
Yeah.
but they have the capacity to think. Now,
Yeah.
how much can we know about how much language they understand? But let's try, how about Helen Keller?
Yeah.
Helen Keller had thoughts in her head before anyone ever reached out to her and communicated with her. So yes, we can think without language.
Yeah.
Can we think at the same depth? Again, this is another one of those things for which there's no control group.
Yeah.
There was a fantastically cruel German baron who, and this is sometime in the 1300s or 1400s, who actually did an experiment of bringing up children and never allowing them to hear a human voice, literally locking them in a dungeon and never allowing them to hear a human voice, and then seeing if introducing language later and later changed their long-term capacity for learning language and for interacting. And it's horrible that someone could think of doing an experiment like that, but to people at that time of his class, expendable peasant was a real thing. But yes, I remember reading about that. And, there are other circumstances of people who have been accidentally or deliberately deprived of language.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when you're asking a question like, can someone think? I mean, I suppose you could hook them up to something measuring their brain waves so that you could see if there was mental activity, and you would have to call that thinking.
Yeah.
But that would be, how would you be able to tell if that's at the level above simple taking what is perceived by the eyes, what is felt by the skin, and sending it over to the brain? What was the brain doing with this information?
Yeah, it was funny because I forgot to say, Richard, you have ESP because you answered the question before I asked it. That's effects for seed causes. Beautiful. So Chomsky says language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. What do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
I mentioned to you before we started this that I really dislike having conversations over Zoom if I have the option of having them in person.
Yeah.
Because so much of genuine, unscripted, true communication happens via the tonality of our language, via our body language, via the eye contact,
Yeah.
via the ways that we interact with each other. And right now, because I'm being interviewed for this particular thing, first of all, to the outside world, I do not exist much from the shoulders down. I am not free to do some things that I would probably do were we in a real natural conversation. I'm one of those people who sometimes, when asked a question, I pace around
Right.
because the body movement the mind and body are connected, and the body movement helps the mind to work.
Yeah.
So there's something unnatural about that. And I can't say we all, but I can say most people have many very important moments with anyone they know well that are literally the moments when you're walking together or driving together and you are processing the same information silently. If you're walking, maybe you're holding their hand, you happen to focus on the same bird as you go through the park and you both smile, or you, in some other way, these nonverbal moments are some of the ones that are the most precious, the things that you really remember later.
Yeah, it's really good. But let's just say you're at the store, you're trying to communicate with the clerk, the language doesn't work. What would you say I'm going to do? What would you do?
The real thing I do is pull out my phone, go to Google Translate, and talk to the clerk.
Yeah.
Now, before Google Translate, in the era before that, I did a great deal of traveling, and sometimes I would find myself traveling in a place where I literally could not read the alphabet. I was in India, I was in China, I was in Japan, I was somewhere else where I'm in Bulgaria. I wandered the streets. I had one of the most fantastic nights of my life when I was walking around the streets in a town called Veliko Turnyovo, Bulgaria, where I ended up being invited to a party where everyone else spoke Bulgarian, and I could hack a few words of my, what little French I could remember. But I had a fantastic evening in the middle of a Bulgarian party, because at a Bulgarian wedding, there's a tradition of inviting in a stranger with no friends.
Oh, really?
And I happened to be walking past, and I got invited in, and I was one of the guests at the wedding, and they were really celebrating because it was someone from so far away, and I couldn't figure out what was happening. But I was dancing with people and eating good food and drinking Bulgarian wines, and the hospitality was spectacular, and I had no idea what was going on, but it was great.
Wow, that was well done. But your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
Depends on the human.
Yeah.
I know some humans who are very analytical. I don't question that they have feelings, but they're private about them. They're uncommunicative of them. And in some cases, I've had people who admitted to me that basically they had almost no feeling of empathy. I used to know a guy who was a computer genius, who I knew something was weird when I went to his house and there were no pictures on the walls. There were boxes everywhere. And it's like, oh, did you just move in? He said, no, I lived here for 5 years. Why? It's like, you haven't personalized your environment in any way. You haven't unpacked it. I know where everything is.
Right.
And it's like he had no impetus to embellish.
Yeah.
When I talked with him at one point, he said that the story I remember is that he was talking to a woman who he liked very much, and her cat had just died and she was distraught. And what he did was he thought about a friend who he knew was good with people and thought, well, what would Mike say? And he said, Mike would probably say, gosh, I really know that, Mike would probably say, I really know you love that cat and I'm sorry. So he said that and she flung her arms around him and said, oh, I thought you were just going to say something awful like, well, you can get another cat. And that was exactly what he was about to say until he thought of what would Mike say.
Oh my
So
God.
he knows that there are other people that have empathy. He knows that, and he can cosplay briefly someone who has empathy. But he self-identifies as not having that.
Yeah. Boy, he knew the strategy to go inside his head. Really good. Richard, these are 2 questions from Alan Turing in the 50s. 1, is thinking a function of the soul?
I wrote a science fiction story called Madman's Bargain that was published in Analog Magazine a number of years ago that goes into exactly that. It is about half of the characters in the story are intelligent computers who are in the process of going insane, because the story is about a future in which we have self-aware intelligent computers, but they all go insane after a while and no one knows why. And the computers are trying to solve the question of why they all go crazy. And it's also about neurolinguistic programming, because the computers are trying to use words that humans will comprehend. When they're talking with humans, they're trying to use words that humans will comprehend to explain experiences that are unique to them. So, yes, I've thought a lot about this question.
Yeah.
And the answer is that, well, how will we know when we have created a self-aware computer? Because, correct me, is there any other circumstance with the question as you asked it? Is there any other circumstance besides a self-aware computer to which that question would be relevant?
Yeah. Well, the second Turing question was, can machines think? So you kind of anticipated it. A few people have told me, well, you've taken the question out of context. Turing went into this. I just sort of isolated the questions as questions and not so much in the context of what kind of point Turing was trying to make by asking that question. So usually when I say is thinking a function of the soul, people go, depends on what you mean by the soul or depends on what you mean by thinking. So my general philosophy is, well, we have these hunches. As Lily Tomlin said, reality is just a collective hunch. What we kind of agree upon what thinking is and what a soul is. But
Do we?
Well, I mean, in general, of course we don't, but we go along and use words. T.S. Eliot said, when I talk to you, I got to use words. So he thinks, words don't work, but we trust that they work a little good enough that we use them all the time. So that's what I'm just saying. Is thinking a function of the soul? Is an interesting question for me to ask to people, because I think, well, thinking is a function of the mind. But some people might go, well, the soul, the mind, and the body are all interconnected, so you can't separate them. So yeah, it's just a prompt to go wherever you want. I mean,
Well, people who do not believe that they have souls are capable of thinking. The question, if, and this is a question that has been asked by some of the more philosophical science fiction writers about, if we create an artificial intelligence that is truly a thinking, empathetic being, will it have a soul?
Yeah.
Will it develop one?
Yeah.
And the problem with it is, I don't know if you're familiar with, there was and I'm going back to the 1750s, 1760s, about some of the British scientists like Hooke and some of the others, where they weighed dying people to see if when the soul left their body, if there was any shift in weight. Literally, they were trying to figure out how much does a soul weigh. They were looking for a way to quantify a soul, and that was the only way they could imagine doing it.
Weigh it.
Because what else do they have at their disposal?
Yeah.
And the question, well, if you are some versions of Orthodox Buddhists, then a dog and a cat and a worm each have a soul.
A rock or a tree, maybe?
No, not a rock. I wouldn't say a rock.
Okay.
A Buddhist would not believe that a rock or a tree had the capacity of thought. A soul does not go in the great wheel. I don't believe that a soul can go into something inanimate or into plant life. It has to be into a form of animal life.
Okay.
But still, you have the question of, now, if that soul is the soul in a worm, does a worm think by the way that we know that we think of thinking?
Well, if worms think, we can't learn their language. We can anthropomorphize like we do with dolphins or chimps and go, dude, my cat loves me. Why? Because I can tell by the cat's eyes. No, that's you putting the word love into the cat's lexicon. So anyways, that was really fun. Because
I will add to your stock of quotes, one from the modern philosophers in the band They Might Be Giants.
Yeah.
Which is, there's a part of every thinking person that wonders what the part that isn't thinking of. So, what we know about the brain in terms of its actual function is that there are still some parts of the brain that we don't really understand what they are and what they do.
And we probably never will, but we keep trying. But that was really fun, because I just sent an invite to the head They Might Be Giants guy to be on my podcast, and he never responded. Do you know him? Do you know those guys?
No.
Yeah. But it was cool. At least I tried, because I find him to be very fun, intelligent lyricist and songwriters. Really good. And that was fun, because the second question, can machines think? I would just refer to Kubrick putting Hal as a empathetic computer in his movie, and once that was done, it was all over with. Computers have empathy. It doesn't mean, it's like fiction can be more true than journalism. So anyways, any comment on can machines think?
Part of in the story that I mentioned, Madman's Bargain, part of the argument that I made at one point in it is that if humans and computers ever communicate, the computer will have to lie.
Oh,
because
wow.
In order to, I'll give you a sentence that any human in America is going to understand. When the tax auditor left the room, it was like the sun had come out from behind a cloud. All right. You, a human, know how it feels when you are looking and the sun comes out from behind a cloud, and you have that feeling of visceral joy. And now for a computer, when the tax inspector, a person who has a certain job, departs a certain place, computers can't move. They don't have a sense of place. It was like an astronomical event happened. All right, the computer has to pretend to understand that. Our language includes fight or flight reflexes, includes
Yeah.
fight or flight metaphors all through our language. So for computers to truly communicate with humans in naturalistic language, they're going to have to suss out the meaning of a whole bunch of things that word by word make no sense.
Yeah.
And this will require intuition, and at a certain level it would require basically lying.
Yeah. Okay, this is really heavy, Richard, because I like what you just said to me. It expands my script immensely right now. So I want to go into this little tangent. And that is, I can type into Google a question, and often now AI answers it. And it will say AI, it will tell you. Sometimes it won't. It will just go to these reference links, and you can surmise what you want to your question. AI lies sometimes, and they come up with stuff that's not true, because I'll print it out and I'll send it to my expert, and they go, "That's not true." And I go, "Okay, thanks. You did." But a lot of them are very thorough. The questions that I ask and they answer, and I trust it, and I can do the research by doing what we did in the old days. Go to the footnotes, figure out where they got that, and see if you feel that that source is reliable and not lying. I ask people often, and not in this interview situation, but I say, what was the first human invention? And I've had amazing list of answers. My favorite was an art student in Flint, Michigan said lying was the first human invention. Now, McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness. That technology, spoken word, printed word, toothpicks, cell phones, extend the technology inventions are the most human thing. That we extending ourselves is a very human thing. The flip of that, and he got it from Walt Whitman in Joyce, that we extend ourselves with our inventions. You could talk about it metaphorically or literally. The flip of it is called biomimicry, where humans see these plants that stick together and then they go invent Velcro. Well, all it is, or looking at beavers make a dam. Oh, I can do that. So we imitate nature to invent new things. That's called biomimicry. So I'm curious, when you said a computer will have to lie, what is your thought of that as a human invention? Did humans invent lying, or is it innate in humans to lie?
Couple of different things.
Yeah.
Starting way back there with the whole thing about Google, that's why I don't use Google.
Yeah.
There happens to be another search engine called Kagi, Kagi, that has no AI, no tracking, no shopping, changing your shopping preferences. It's really it is a stripped down tool that is, I pay $10 a month for it, and it's some of the best $10 I pay per month.
Right.
Because of the fact that my searches get me copiously referenced, honest searches that don't include AI.
Yeah.
It filters out AI, and that's what I want.
Yeah.
I do not trust AI at the current level of its advancement. I don't believe I'll ever trust it at any level of advancement, because of the fact that what it is doing, what it is trying to do deliberately, is to monetize everything, monetize every interaction that you ever have with it. and to normalize getting an AI answer instead of going what an academic researcher does and going for where's the original, where's the contemporary document, where is this from? And it will try giving me many AI summaries before it will let me get to to the document. And I'm going for the document. So I'm using Kagi, and I use a browser called Orion, and the combination of the two is worth the $10 a month. Now, please, there was so much prologue to that question.
Know.
I'd like you to ask me the actual question
I'm
again.
I'm glad you hung in there. The basic, it was just a quickie going back to when you said computers will have to lie.
The question
is lying a human invention, or is it innate in humans to lie?
I don't know if there is any animal in the animal kingdom that lies. I have never looked up to see whether there are any of the great apes that when they see another great ape coming, hide the piece of fruit and go, nope, haven't seen a thing here. For all I know, there is. I mean, I know that there in recent decades, they have discovered things about some animals, about the great apes, about crows, about octopi, and about their sometimes astonishing levels of sentience and communication. And it's never occurred to me to look up to see whether any of those critters do it.
But again, is that anthropomorphizing because you put on an animal? I'm talking about humans. Is it innate or invented for a human to lie? Animals aside.
Well, if I was going to say, if you ever show me a human who has never lied, then I would say, well, you know, here's one. But I have talked with people who are very familiar with some aspects of the autistic spectrum. And there are some people with some forms of autism who are very highly intelligent, but don't know a reason to lie. So I believe that it is possible. Our brains, the human brain, we may call it autism, we may call it anything, but the human brain is, in a newborn baby, is a machine that is writing its own software, that is trying to figure out what does that stimulus. Oh, wait, that's coming from my eyes. That's light. And now if in time, I will learn to focus on things, so I will see images rather than just light. And we're all writing our own. We're writing our own machine language, is the way that somebody in computers would probably put it. So we're writing our own machine language, and then on top of that machine language, we have other things that we're writing. And based on the structures in the brain, the formations, malformations, what to one person may be a malformation, to another person may be something healthful and positive. How can we know? We've never been anyone but ourselves.
It's really good points. There's a couple there. One is when you said can I go to the original document? Like in the old days, we'd go, what's your source? That was a big question. What's your source on that? And then they give you the source and they go, well, I want to explore that source. I study etymology. Every day I go to my favorite website, Etymology Online, and I look up a word, and then it tells me where the word came from. But somebody sat in an office and looked up some stuff and decided that's where the word came from. Every once in a while, the word says, the passage under the word says, of unknown origin. I'm like, every word is of unknown origin. Sorry, somebody came along and said, here's where the word came from. It's like when I asked Charlie Hayden, who quoted Old Joe Clark in the middle of an Ornette Coleman song, I said, who wrote it? And he goes, nobody wrote it. No, somebody wrote the song, but it was passed down so long that they never wrote down the guy's name or how it morphed into that riff, you know. And so, you know, somebody claims the publishing and says, I wrote it because I claim the arrangement publishing. So that of unknown origin is interesting to me, because that's like McNamara saying, if you win, you write the history books.
Yeah.
So it's who's writing the original document is important. And I'm not doubting what you're saying. That's really important. And Marcel Proust asks a question, which I asked way down, but I'll bring it up now, is on what occasion do you lie? And so I'll ask you that question. On what occasion do you lie?
There are many different types of lies. You know, if a server at a restaurant comes by and said, did you enjoy your meal?
Yeah.
And it's a meal that either well, it was mediocre, I didn't enjoy it, I ate it, but I don't feel like an argument right now, I'm going to say, oh, sure. You know, yeah, there are certain lies that are, you know, I don't feel like arguing with you lies, so I will go along with you on something trivial. But if this was something non-trivial, we'd be getting into some hectic time right now.
Exactly.
There are lies of kindness. You know, what anybody thinks of when someone says, does this make me look fat? There are lies. I mean, there are so many different kinds of lies that humans deploy at various times.
That's the one I get the most for true.
Right.
On what occasion do you lie? To spare someone's feelings. It's all about feelings that go. But in asking this question, 40 years, 1,000 interviews, about 2 people go, I don't lie. I like it on occasion people go, well, I don't lie to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm happy that people, my 2 favorite answers, Tom Waits, I didn't get this, because it's the question they ask the Marcel Proust question at the end of every Vanity Fair magazine. They have his question. And it says, on what occasion do you lie? And Waits goes, I didn't know I needed an occasion. And this other woman who dresses the stars goes, that's called manners. So you really beautiful.
I have a friend by the name of Harry Turtledove, who is he's a very popular author, has had some New York Times bestsellers. Yeah. And since he is a fiction author, he just says, I lie for a living.
Yeah.
I tell you things about people who never existed. I lie to you and make you fascinated by them.
But he writes for a living too, and he's successful, and that's beautiful.
No, that is, excuse me, not but he writes. That is integral to his writing.
Right. I mean, but it's like I say people who are in PR, public relations, publicists, they're professional liars.
Yeah.
You know, they can get away with fudging a little, or, you know, it's like the guy who invented Wikipedia, he whitewashes his own entry. And so you imagine being a politician and, you know, someone types in, you're a war criminal in your Wikipedia page. And the next, he has someone on his staff go, quick, change that.
Yeah.
In fact, I forgot to tell you. I didn't get to it yet. Okay, so here's the next one. Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
Some people get happiness by pursuing meaning.
Yeah.
And I believe that sort of person, I believe that I am that sort of person, and I believe that sort of person has a particularly fulfilling life.
Yeah.
Because I have managed to spend my life in the arts at one level or another. When I was in high school, I thought I was going to be the greatest photographer the world had ever known. I was wrong, but I had that dream. I had that goal. And while I was working to get enough money to open a photography studio was when I started taking my writing seriously. And I discovered I was a better and more fulfilled writer than I was a photographer. And my cameras got stolen, and I didn't replace the most expensive ones because I'd found another thing. And then I got involved in theater. I started writing here in LA in 1986 for an old newspaper called the Los Angeles Reader. And then the next year, 87, for the Easy Reader in the South Bay. And then 88 or 89, I think, was BAM Magazine, Music Connection.
BAM, my friend's dad started BAM.
Who's that?
Will Erickson is the son. I forgot the dad's
I don't know.
Anyways, that's cool. BAM was cool. Reader was great. I read all those.
I loved it. And these, I was getting paid to go out and learn things I wanted to know and then explain them to other people. And that was fascinating. And that, in terms of bringing meaning to life, the art, being involved in the arts, has brought a great deal of meaning into my life, and the meaning has brought me joy.
Yeah.
The Easy Reader News in the South Bay, our whole staff was so proud when we got the building inspector and a member of the school board we got the building inspector thrown into jail. We got a member of the school board fired and jailed. I mean, it's like, this is the kind of thing where it gives you meaning in your life to do something that to somebody watching you, it's somebody sitting there and typing into a computer, but you have just thrown a pebble into that pond and the ripples go out. And you, for one thing, sometimes it has consequences, like getting a bad person fired. Sometimes it has consequences like helping to keep a restaurant in business. When I did a restaurant review about them and I heard from them, we were thinking of closing, and then, you got us over the hump, and that meaning in life, that's powerful.
Really powerful. Well put, Richard. I got the question from Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. He says happiness doesn't tend to last, meaning tends to last. What do you think of that?
Well, some people are just determined to be unhappy and will manage it.
Yeah.
Some people are determined to be happy and they manage it. I think most people are somewhere in the middle. They will be happy or unhappy depending on circumstances, which mostly include their level of success in the monetary world and finding a life partner and various other things.
Yeah.
But, and again, I just am thinking, I don't remember who said it, but, people are mostly as happy as they allow themselves to be.
Yeah. It's good. So does the brain...
Many years ago, I was mentioning someone who, I mentioned a guy who I knew who was an editor a long time ago. And I noticed, after knowing him for a while, that he methodically sabotaged his own relationships and his own jobs when he was working. And I would watch, because whatever he got was never enough. And I asked him at one point, just point blank, what would it take to make you happy? And we had this was as we were walking down some railroad tracks in Georgia, along with another friend who stayed completely quiet after that question because he wanted to hear what would be said. And he said, I don't know. I don't think there is anything.
Wow.
So he knew, when he actually examined himself, he realized that there was nothing that was going to make him happy.
Yeah.
He would always want something else.
Yeah. Really heavy. So, does the brain more detect consciousness or create consciousness? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more so detecting it or more so creating?
I don't know and can't know.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not an outside observer here.
Yeah.
I've never not had consciousness and been conscious of it. So, that's a question that I don't think can be answered.
Yeah.
I mean, if you believe in some cosmic consciousness that animates the universe,
Yeah.
that a little bit of it inhabits each of our bodies, that's probably what you're talking about when you're talking about a soul. But
Yeah.
that's not the way I think.
What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Well, the amount of time that I spent hesitating on that question, a photon could have left the sun and be on its way to Mars. Probably about halfway there now. So I would say definitely the speed of light is faster than the speed of thought, because thought, all right, thought is more than reaction. And thought allows for pensiveness. It almost requires it.
Yeah. Audre Lorde, the poet, said, "You can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools." Her colleague Yvonne Rainer said, "Oh, you can if you expose the tools." What new tool do you suggest? And it doesn't have to be tangible.
I am not sure that I understand the metaphor at the heart of that.
Yeah.
When you say you can't
Well, Audre
take
Lorde,
down the master's
yeah.
house.
First of all, what I'm really asking, because I opened some of these questions with cute quotes, and you put the questions in the context you want. What I'm really asking is, what's the tool you most gravitate towards? Audre Lorde is probably using that metaphorically, saying you can't dismantle the master's house, which is white supremacy, maybe for her. That's just my guess. So it's like, you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Like, can we, you gave a good example of it there. You use your staff used journalism to bust the bad guys. So journalism is a sort of master's tool. They're like, well, you have freedom of the press, see? Yeah, right. You get freedom of the press. So you had the freedom of the press. The bust of it's like, Art Kunken published the address for all the narcs in the LA Free Press. That's like, now it's like you could find an address for anybody on Google. So I mean, basically, it's what's the tool you most gravitate towards if you want to apply it to dismantling the master's house or making an impact on those in control or the higher ups, or
Well, for the tool metaphor, there's the old saying that to someone who has only a hammer, every problem looks like a nail.
That's Twain. Very good. I love that.
The thing about that is, so when I have a toolbox because of the fact that I happen to be gifted enough as a writer that I can be persuasive as a writer.
Yeah.
I happen to be good enough as a communicator.
Yeah.
That I can work as a communicator.
Yeah.
I run an arts venue. Buy the things that we sponsor at that arts venue. They are tools for engaging with and raising certain types of consciousness in society.
Yeah.
So to a person who develops multiple tools, you use the tool that's appropriate to the job.
Yeah, it's like your first answer to the question, what's the best thing for a human being? You really sussed those all out really well. Yeah, it's not only the tool, it's the community and the sharing. Really good.
There are some things that you can do alone there's some things that you can do sitting alone in a room that will have repercussions perhaps years later when someone reads something you wrote, hears something you sang, whatever. There are other things that are in and of the moment, and there are other things where your position is to be the catalyst. Your position is to bring people together, and you may never be identified. Like, who knows who it was that introduced P.D. Barnum to Bailey? Who knows who it was that introduced the various members of the Grateful Dead to each other? Who was, who made that introduction? Nobody knows their name, but they created something so that there was a link between those names that goes down through centuries. Hasn't gone through centuries with the Grateful Dead yet, but when you have I'm thinking of other people through music that you always think of: Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers, Stefan Grappelli, and Django Reinhardt.
Really good.
Whoever it was that introduced them had an effect that will never be recognized, but that the world owes them a debt.
Yeah, it's really well put. And because I asked the tool question so much, someone asked, well, what about a toy? So what's a toy you gravitate towards?
It's odd that would be, of all the things that you would ask, that would be the thing that I would have the most of a problem thinking of. I mean, one of them is that a while ago, my brother's a cancer patient, and I told him that when he was healthy enough after his surgery, I was going to buy him an electric bicycle, because we didn't know how much stamina he was going to have. So after his surgery, I bought him one, and I bought me one. And that is probably the toy that I most enjoy, because of the fact that when you are someone who is a writer and the administrator for an arts organization, and you spend so much time sitting at a desk, there are times when it's just, oh, I just need to get on the bike and ride somewhere. Oh, wait, look, that letter, that has to go to the post office. It's like,
dude,
no, it didn't. I could take it to the mailbox, but no, that has to go to the post office, or I need something from the store, and it'll fit in my bike basket, and the toy that breaks me out of my surroundings. I mean, the other toy that breaks me out of my surroundings is I play the mandolin very badly.
Yeah.
But I get a certain amount of joy from just playing with it, from just not trying to play a particular song, but just just plinking away on the strings or strumming some chords and just seeing where it goes. And it takes me out of myself. It takes me, both of those things, riding a bicycle has you living in the moment, and time moves at its own speed, and playing music has you living in the moment, and time moves at its own speed.
Isn't it amazing too? You picked one that you don't work music, you play music. And that's, Walter Pater, all art aspires to the condition of music. All the arts wish they could be as cool as music.
Well, when there are other things like when I'm completely in the flow of writing. When I'm completely in the flow of writing, I can completely lose track of time. And I would, especially when I was younger and writing fiction. I haven't written much fiction in some time. When I was younger and writing more fiction, I would get lost in the flow of things, and I would just suddenly discover that, gosh, I'm having trouble staying awake here, and it's like, oh, it's 3 a.m. That's why, because I got into something.
Yeah, it's beautiful. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
I have a number of worries due to family health issues.
Yeah.
As it happens, my wife has early onset dementia and some physical problems that go with it. And I worry about what would happen to her if something happens to me.
Yeah.
Because she's no longer capable of truly taking care of herself. I have, that's...
Yeah.
The worries about people you love.
Yeah. So McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound the poet that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, so we might learn how to cope with what we don't like about our inventions. So Richard, I asked you the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
For one thing, people focus on the artists whose message and style most closely approximate their own, or in some cases, who challenge them in the way that they find most interesting.
Yeah.
So sometimes you look for people who have the synergy, and sometimes you look for people who challenge you with languages or with language or ideas.
Yeah.
And there may be someone whose point of view is more important, but who you're not paying attention to because the way in which they state their ideas is either dry or dull or so confrontational that you reject it.
Yeah.
We're not always paying attention to the people we should be paying attention to.
Yeah.
And the people who are most likely to be giving us very important negative messages, whether it is from the message itself or the way in which they put it, we're likely to either, it's not just that we wouldn't give credence to them when we hear their message, we're not likely to tune into it in the first place. We're not likely to notice it because we live in a world of so many competing messages. One of the things that, as much as the richness of interpersonal communication on the internet has in many ways enriched the world, there was something very comforting about knowing that you and your neighbors and some random person that you met might all understand some things that had the same cultural context. Look at what this has done to satire. If you're old enough to, anybody who's old enough to remember Mad Magazine remembers that they used to have these satires on popular plays, particularly musicals. You can't do that now. We're all listening to things that are so different that, what is it that we would all know? Satire is almost dead because we're not familiar with enough of the same cultural reference to actually be able to understand it.
Yeah.
And in another way, when I'm doing culinary history lectures, one of the things that I sometimes do right at the start when I'm talking to an adult audience, I used to teach adult education classes through UCLA Extension, through a thing called the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. And I would have a class there, and on the first session, I would ask people, okay, all of you, how many of you had something in your lunchbox that none of the other kids knew what it was? And there's always hands that go up where someone from Argentina would be, oh yeah, well, I had an empanada, meat and olive empanada in my lunchbox, and everybody thought it was an apple turnover, and they couldn't believe it. They'd never heard of anything like that. And someone Korean said, I opened my kimchi, and everybody around me like ran away. And that I had these things, and then it's like, really? Okay, how many of you have taught your kids how to make that item? You learned how to make that from your grandmother made that for you. Your mother made that for you. How many of you have taught your kid to make that? And all of the heads all go down because there's something of our ancestral cultural consciousness that has seeped away without us noticing. I had a show at Collage, the arts space that I manage in San Pedro, where an artist by the name of Eva Luna Smith, who has a very, very fine country influenced band called Fine Folk, had done a show that was mostly sort of, this was at an early phase when she was doing things that reminded me of the Joni Mitchell era, Laurel Canyon, Topanga Canyon kind of folky hippie thing. And she had been doing some of that music. And then she called her mother, who was in the audience, up on stage, and they harmonized on a lullaby in Danish.
Yeah.
And I cried during that because it was like, oh my gosh, she is here with her mother singing the first song she ever remembers learning.
Wow.
And it's in a non-English language. And she remembers that now, and she will remember that as long as she lives. Well, how many people get that cultural competence, that sense of cultural background? How many people have that? And it's a thing that we've been losing day by day. We've been losing it in terms of food. We've been losing it in terms of music. We've been losing our sense of grounding, because if you go back through history, people disparaged other people on the basis of them eating foods that they found strange or stinky. The Japanese spoke of the Koreans as the garlic eaters. A more modern set of philosophers referred to the French as cheese-eating surrender monkeys. I believe that what was that again? Oh yeah. Anyway, but you have this tendency to whatever your mom made was right, and everything else, it may have been wrong, it may have been just different, but it was different. It was something that, so people throughout history have had the taste of home. Marcel Proust famously, with the smell of the Madeleines taking him back to grandma's kitchen. You know what? What is it that you would smell if you grew up in contemporary California? What smell could take you back to your grandmother's kitchen? Your grandmother probably eats the same thing as everybody else in the area, which means she might have dim sum for breakfast, Mexican for lunch, and Italian for dinner. And, you're German, you're Lithuanian, you're a great American mutt. You're not really any connection to any particular culture. And there are good things and bad things about losing that cultural connection. And we've lost, by losing those common connections that you used to have, when we at least all could say, well, if you grew up in an American school, you had civics lessons, so you understood some things about our culture, and you read some of the great books. You read Mark Twain. So you read Twain, and you read Whitman, and you read some other people that you didn't necessarily like when you read them. You read Catcher in the Rye, and later on you got it. So, but now, we're losing that.
Wow, lots of great thoughts there. Bringing up Man Magazine touches my soul deeply, because one of my favorite Alfred E. Newman lines is, "The English language is the only language where a double negative is a no-no." And the mom singing the folk song and bringing you to tears, and you might not have known what the words meant.
Couldn't understand a word of it.
Was T.S. Eliot saying,
you could feel it in
poetry can communicate before it's understood. That was an amazing moment. That's the beauty of, so much tuba throat singers, Brazilian music. We don't necessarily know what the words are meaning.
I've watched a really good Cajun French comedian when my regular French is fragmentary and I really don't understand Cajun French, and he was funny.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because you are laughing along with the audience, and you're not. I compared notes with an audience member, discovered that I was fairly close about the narrative that this guy was doing. This was at a place called the Liberty Theater in Eunice, Louisiana, which on Sunday has three bands and one Cajun French comedian and one English language comedian. The English language comedian was good. The Cajun comedian was great. And he was doing a routine about how he really wanted the stability of a government job, so he wanted to become the state amphibian. And then somebody told him that the job of the state amphibian was already taken by a thing called a minette. And I went to the guy next to me, "What's a minette?" And he goes, "A little frog about that big." And then he's starting to give people, he needs the minette to go extinct so that he can get a government job by replacing it. He starts giving recipes for praline minette, and again, this is all in French, but you may not have understood the individual words, but you got it.
You got it. Beautiful. Okay, I want to salute my brother.
It's enough to make you believe in telepathy.
I want to salute my brother for a second too, because he carries on the tradition of making pagaci and pierogi in the lessons my grandmother and my mom taught him, and carrying on that tradition.
Well, my twin brother and I are in a month from now, we're going to be in Krakow, where we're going to investigate our family heritage.
Nice.
Because that's where our grandmother came from, and we're going back to the source.
Wow, that's great. So, do artists have moral obligation?
They may decide that they do, and they may decide that they don't.
Yeah.
And there are some forms of art that it is hard to say. How can a calligrapher transmit a moral obligation? How can an abstract artist transmit? Now, a calligrapher can decide to do their calligraphy with a given word, so that's actually the wrong one. But I was thinking of it as, how can someone whose art form is about an abstraction, or someone whose art form is instrumental music, what moral obligation could there be? Now, someone may decide that they have, that they've figured out a way to transmit a moral lesson in some form that makes that difficult.
Yeah.
But the question is, if you say they have a moral obligation, that's me telling them that they have something that they have to do. I can't tell them how to do it, but they have to do it. And it's like, nope, you don't get to do that. You don't get to assign someone a task that you can't actually quantify in any way.
Yeah. Do you have to attend to that obligation?
No, that obligation seems to be something I don't have to attend to. Sorry.
Very good.
For the people watching out there, my twin brother is flying into LAX in a while, and he's going to be letting me know when to pick him up.
Beautiful, no problem. In fact, we're going to close out with this question. And Richard, it's been a truly enlightening experience, and I'd love to do a part 2, because we only got through an eighth of the questions, and I've really learned a lot, and I've had a great time. And that's what I think.
I'd be happy to do a part 2, but that implies that we'd have to do a parts 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, we'll see if I can be less wordy, although I doubt that.
No, it's when I find someone like you, I like, this could be an 8-part Netflix series, but it's really, it could be 5, 6 months down the line, whatever works. But the next question is, are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
Oh, more afraid of old ideas.
Yeah.
I don't remember who it was. Again, this is someone who I knew from the science fiction community, who characterized people as neophiles or neophobes. And if you had a fascination with the new, if you had an interest in welcoming the new things into your life, it implies a flexibility of mind. Now, there's such a thing as having a mind that is so flexible that it's shapeless. You jump on every new fad. You jump on every bit of every bandwagon that comes along. You're like the people who were first characterized as foodies because of the fact that they would run to one restaurant after another, and they would never really examine the cuisine at all. They would never learn the background behind it. It was more about being able to tell your friends before they had, well, I ate at that place before you did, and I have known people whose lives have been ruined by jumping from thing to thing and never focusing. I am much more afraid of old ideas that are outmoded, that people keep trying to integrate because they can't imagine a way to detach that idea from themselves or from the society in which they live.
Yeah.
That's dangerous.
Yeah.
If you look back, there are ways in which I see humanity as advancing at a snail's pace. When I was growing up, I was born in 1956. When I was a kid, the idea of a bar fight happening or of people going out their parking lot to settle things with their fists was a much more common thing in society.
Yeah.
It was assumed that every once in a while you'd be in a fight.
Yeah.
But I think that we've gotten past that, where, you know, the idea of adults fighting is wrong is
Yeah.
the majority opinion in our society. So we're creaking toward these little changes in humanity. Doesn't mean I'm against martial arts, doesn't mean I think
Yeah.
there's anything bad about knowing how to fight if you have to.
Yeah.
But the idea of, well, let's go settle this with our fists, that doesn't really settle anything.
That studying James Joyce in Irish culture, the joke is this a private fight or can anyone join in? But can I throw in one bonus question?
Sure.
Okay, because I just formed it today, and so it's a little still, not solidified into a question, but Marina Abramovich, the performance artist, is on a podcast now, and the little article in the Financial Times says she was walking down the street with her mom when she was 4, and she saw a snake, and she had no fear. She was like, "Oh, it's something moving," and her mom just freaked her out. "Oh my God, don't touch that!" And she said, so it leads me to ask the question: are we like hardwired? And I know it's stupid saying innate or invented, but is fear hardwired in us or is it invented? Like in her case, maybe the snake wouldn't have harmed her. Maybe it would have. The parent was trying to do their duty to keep harm from the child. But the way she did it instilled this fear factor in her. And then if you study the rest of her life, it's this fear thing is partly what she's probably trying to get out of her in all her art. So any thoughts on this? Is fear more innate or more invented by humans?
Those who have no capacity for fear are going to die a lot earlier, because those with no capacity for fear are going to be able to stand in the middle of a railroad track and watch a train coming toward them, knowing what it is, and they don't have the immediate fear causes you to jump.
Yeah.
Thinking about it and then deciding it would be a good idea causes you to stand there instead of just using your darn reflexes, and the reflexes are what makes you jump. So you have to have the capacity for fear as a survival element.
Yeah, survival.
Now,
yeah.
knowing what to fear. Now, there's the important part.
What to fear.
Because
yes.
people will attempt to tell you what to fear.
Yeah.
Should you fear that snake? Should you have a greater sense of fear that you're afraid that there are so many people who are in a state of hunger and want in the world that there's going to be a powder keg at some point?
Yeah.
Should you fear that there are so many people who have no access to the arts that you are going to be spending the rest of your life in a community and on a planet where the important things in life are missing? Now, is that more of a fear? Well, that's a much more sophisticated kind of fear, but that's the kind of fear that motivates you to do something.
Yeah.
So there's fear like the fear of walking off the edge of a cliff, and there's fear of the I am watching some aspect of a healthy society crumble, and if I don't do something about it, I am complicit in that.
Yeah. Really heavy, because the train coming towards you made me think of Alan Watts loves to quote, I think it's Sartre or Camus, and they said, the only thing in life is whether you commit suicide or not. And I mean, life is much more than that, but to narrow it down to, you're on a train track and a train's coming at you. What do you do? And what's the roots of your decision making? And
Bob Dylan said, he not busy being born is busy dying. And that's true too, that, if you actually look at the way that you live your life and ask yourself, how would you live if you were, well, I wrote a story about this, and it's one of the only things of mine that people can find online, which is if you look online for a story called Encounter in the Delta,
Uh-huh.
I address part of what is addressed in there is that if you were absolutely certain of the immortality of the soul, of reincarnation,
Yeah.
if you were sure of reincarnation, would you live any differently
Yeah.
than you would if you were sure that this is the only life that you have to live?
Yeah.
And it's a story that is very dear to my heart because I discovered after it was published that someone said, I have just found a discussion group that is discussing your story, and you have got to read this. And it was a discussion group of Buddhist scholars and who were talking about this. And someone in the discussion said, well, we don't know anything about Mr. Foss, but he obviously is a scholar of Buddhism because he got this obscure point right. And I'm going, I made that up. What are you talking about?
Well, you
mean that's true?
You tapped into the Buddha consciousness, or they interpreted that way, and you made it up in another way.
It's like the, we're, if you have no fear, that's the thing is, if you had an absolute sense of reincarnation, then, and you knew that, well, every life is just going to lead right into the next one.
Yeah.
How would you act?
Yeah. Richard, that's Paul Krasner says, I only believe in reincarnation in one of my past lives.
Yes. Well, I am only certain of this life. I'm pretty sure it's the only one I have, and just look to do the best things I can do for the individuals around me and for the culture and society that I interact with. And by being wired the way I am, that brings me a certain level of joy. That's why I started collage, which for what probably wasn't explained beforehand. One of the things that collage does is we collect musical instruments, refurbish them, and then give them to graduating music students.
Yeah.
I have given more than 150 people the gift of music, the ability to keep on making music after they leave school. The group that I founded has given bands to 2 different schools. We have given 30 guitars to a school so that they could start a guitar class. We have given over $20,000 of music worth of musical instruments to a school in Inglewood so they could start a concert band. Those are the kind of things that, you sleep a little better at night after you think about there are people whose lives have been made materially better by the fact that, not that I did all of this myself, but that I organized it. I facilitated it. I made it possible for those donors to get in touch with the people that both the volunteers and the people we hired to refurbish those instruments, and then the teachers who get them into people's hands or who contact me and say, hey, I've got this student who's graduating and I know that they would use it. You're being part of the cog in the machine. Being a cog in the machine is generally spoken of in a negative way. Oh, you're part of the machine. Well, if you've ever done like traditional folk dance, where you have something where you're dancing straight towards someone, and if they do the dance correctly, they will not be in the way when you get to where they are. And instead, you'll be grabbing someone else's arm. To be a cog in that functioning machine, where you're all working together toward a common goal, a common good, can be so rewarding.
Yeah. Well, I think we've accomplished that today. It's been a joy, and I really am grateful for this enlightening time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. And let me just hit the end broadcast button here, even though I hope this never ends. And we can keep talking forever and ever.